Hi, my name is Michael David, and we study ancient mysteries all around the globe at my site, mysteryislands.net. So today we discover Alexander the Great, and he truly is great. He tried to conquer the world. That was his vision. He ascended the throne in about 350 BC, and he was only 20 years old. A young man, he had a lot of passion and drive. He had a big Greek army, and he chose to conquer the known world at that time and start with Persia and head east. And he fought with King Darius. So you may want to look into Darius if you want to know that part of the story. And he fought back the Persians in that region. The odd situation is that he had a chance to wipe them out completely, but he chose not to. He decided to head south to Egypt. In our field, we believe that Alexander was looking for his true father, who may have been one of the demigods or the Annunaki. And so he wanted to head south to Egypt, find out if his father was Amun-Ra. And he wanted to be immortal, not just a king, but to live forever. So that was, I believe, his passion. So he heads south with his army to Egypt, and he is actually welcomed there. He's able to control Egypt without a fight. They feel he can be beneficial and helpful as a great leader. And he does consult oracles, the Oracle of Delphi in Greece, and these are like psychics that give hidden riddles to him, and the Oracle in Egypt, and that's part of his mystical path and journey. And so in Egypt, he consults an oracle which tells him he needs to go to Babylon and find out his true history. And so that's what he does. He heads to Babylon, the center of the known world at that time, fights with Darius again, and is able to overcome him, marches triumphantly into the gates of Babylon, and he is involved in reconstructing the tomb of Amun-Ra. And that's his passion, is to find out if Ra, which we believe is one of the Annunaki, is his true father. And during this project, he dies. He has a high fever, and he never completes his mission. So that's the story of Alexander the Great. And in our field, like I said, we believe characters like Dionysus and Hercules are not mythical gods, but they're interacting with Alexander as part of this true factual historical tale. In traditional scholarship, they assign it all to mythology, and there's no discussion as to whether these are actual living beings in our past. So about a generation later, around 270 BC, the Egyptians want a scholar or a scribe to write down their true history, and they turn to Manetho, and it's spelled Manetho. If you're a serious student of ancient alien history, you do want to read the writings of Manetho. And he wrote about all of the ancient dynasties in Egypt and rulers back in the beginning of time as he knew it, or as he could find. And he separated before the flood and after the flood. And before the flood, he wrote about these kings that ruled for thousands of years. This was obviously not a human time frame. He was referring to the Annunaki, and he was talking about Ptah and his son Ra. This pushes the timeline back in Egypt to 20,000 BC and the Great Flood at about 10,000 BC. So he has Ptah ruling for 9,000 years, and then Ra only in charge for 1,000 years, and it's cut short, his dynasty, his reign, by the Great Flood. So that's part of the history, and that's confirmed by other sources. You can look at the Palermo stone and Turin papyrus, and there's other sources that confirm these lists. As far as his actual volume of work, it was placed in the Library of Alexandria. Serious students in our field know that it burned down several times, so we no longer have that volume. But other researchers, like Josephus in Rome, wrote down portions and copied parts of it. So thank you, Josephus, and later scholars for preserving this text. And then a little bit later, about 260 BC, there's another priest named Berossus, or scholar, and he's in Babylonia. And his job was to catalog all of the rulers across the world, not just Egypt, but everywhere, the known world at that time. And Berossus had this giant volume of books that once again is no longer available, but later researchers like Josephus did copy it down. It's called the Fragments of Berossus. And you can look that up. Once again, serious scholars in our field need to dig into the Fragments of Berossus, find out our ancient history. And he also refers to 10 rulers of the past. They were some sort of Annunaki gods that ruled for thousands of years, and long time spans that were way beyond human. And so he's also referring to this kingship that goes back 430,000 years. So when you hear researchers in our field say that they believe the Anunnaki first came here about 432,000 years ago, that's what they're somewhat referring to as the Berossus list. And he also talks about a fish king, Oannes, who was a helpful creator. He taught the gifts of civilization to mankind. And this included a lot of building dams and dikes in Egypt with the flood and controlling that area, that land. He also talks about monsters that were created that were half eagle, half hippopotamus, half elephant, half human, half bird. And we see all kinds of artwork all over Egypt, all over the pyramids of half human, half animal hybrids. It's too extensive, in my opinion, to just be a fantasy. I think it's based on some sort of reality in our distant past. I believe there were these kind of monsters. I made a movie about it called Majestic Monsters, and you can see my works. They're online at mysteryislands.net. You can watch my films right online for about $5. Please support my work. So just to recap real quick, it's important in our field to dig into Alexander the Great and Greece at its peak of power when they tried to control the world, and dig into the Egyptian priest, Manetho, because he had such great documentation, a great scholar, and then the Babylonian scholar, Berossus, who wrote so much about our ancient history. And all of it, in my opinion, points to these Anunnaki that we're talking about in the book of Genesis, who were very much present in our field at that time. Thanks a lot. I'm Michael David at mysteryislands.net.